All right, let's dive in. Today we're heading to early 20th century Hawaii.
Ooh, sounds fun.
Yeah, should be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using excerpts from the Wondery podcast American History Tellers, season 56, episode 3, called Waves of Change.
Okay.
And basically we're exploring how surfing,
Surfing.
surfing, got tangled up with tourism and racial dynamics.
Wow, I wouldn't think those things would go together.
Right. It's a really interesting story, especially during this really pivotal time in Hawaiian history.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay, so imagine this. May 1907,
Okay.
Jack London.
Oh, wow, the Call of the Wild guy.
Yeah, exactly. He gets to Waikiki,
Okay.
and he's totally captivated by surfing.
I mean, who wouldn't be?
Right, but he even compares Hawaiian surfers to kings, which is kind of ironic.
Ironic, how so?
Well, considering what happened to the Hawaiian monarchy just a few years earlier.
Oh, right, the overthrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. It really shows how alluring Hawaii was for mainlanders back then.
You know, Mark Twain had that same fascination when he visited in 1866.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was actually one of the first to write about surfing for, a wider audience.
That's interesting. So these early accounts of surfing kind of planted the seed for tourism, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's exactly what businessmen like Lauren Thurston were hoping for.
Thurston. He was one of the guys behind the overthrow of the Queen, right?
Yeah, in 1893. And then he goes on to establish the Hawaiian Bureau of Information.
Which is basically saying, hey, we've got this incredible place. Let's make it a tourist destination.
Exactly. He was all about promoting tourism.
But do you think he saw the potential downsides of doing that?
Well, Thurston was very much a product of his time,
Okay.
focused on economic development.
Yeah.
One of his phrases was even Hawaii for health, pleasure, and profit.
Wow. Not very subtle.
Not at all. He even worked with Thomas Edison's moving picture company.
Seriously?
Yeah, to make early travelogue films.
So basically like the first tourism commercials for Hawaii. Wow. He was really shaping how mainlanders saw Hawaii.
Totally.
But he wasn't the only one, right?
No, definitely not.
There was also Alexander Hume Ford.
Oh, yeah, the journalist.
Yeah, he really pushed for Hawaii too, but more specifically for white entrepreneurs.
Right. He even founded that whites-only outrigger canoe club.
Which basically said, come enjoy paradise, but only if you look like us.
Yeah. It's a pretty stark reminder of who was benefiting from Hawaii's beauty and who wasn't.
Yeah, definitely a darker side to the whole tourism boom.
For sure. And then, in the middle of all of this, you have Duke Kahanamoku rising to fame.
Duke Kahanamoku, the surfer and Olympic swimmer. I love his story.
Yeah, he's a legend. He wins gold in the 1912 Olympics.
Speaking of a global ambassador for surfing, right?
Exactly. What's so interesting about him, though, is that he had this welcoming, inclusive spirit.
Like that Aloha spirit everyone talks about.
Yeah, exactly. And it really clashed with those exclusive attitudes of the time.
So he kind of represented a different side of Hawaii.
For sure. He was super proud of his heritage and wanted to share the joy of surfing with the world.
But even his story has this kind of bittersweet element, right?
Yeah, every time he went back to Waikiki after all his
It was
travels.
just getting more and more crowded.
Exactly. More hotels, more businesses.
All these signs of so-called progress.
Right, but also signs of native Hawaiians getting pushed out.
Yeah, sounds like progress came at a cost.
It often does. It's hard to imagine Waikiki before all the high-rises.
That must have been completely different back then.
Oh, yeah, a totally different world.
So how did it transform from this quiet village to this bustling tourist destination?
Well, to understand that, we need to talk about Big Sugar and the Big Five corporations.
Okay, let's do it. Those are some powerful forces we're dealing with.
Oh, yeah, they were the ones shaping the landscape, both literally and figuratively.
And that's where we'll pick up next time. Okay, so Big Sugar and the Big Five. What exactly were they all about?
Well, basically, they were these giant corporations that ran those huge sugar plantations.
Okay, so kind of the backbone of the Hawaiian economy.
Yeah, pretty much. They controlled so much land and really dictated Hawaii's economy back then.
So how did they play into the whole Waikiki transformation?
They were major players in the development of Waikiki.
Building hotels, resorts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and a perfect example is the Royal Hawaiian Hotel.
Oh, the Pink Palace.
Exactly, built in 1927. This massive, luxurious hotel became a symbol of the new Hawaii.
But wasn't it built on land that was, like, sacred to native Hawaiians?
It was. The opening night was actually pretty tense.
Really? What happened?
Well, you had the head of the Matson Navigation Company.
Who built the hotel, right?
Yeah. He's trying to, keep things smooth with Princess Abigail Kushi Kalanianaoa.
Who was a descendant of the Hawaiian monarchy, so like a direct connection to the land.
Right. And she wasn't afraid to speak her mind.
I bet.
She basically reminded the Matson guy that their other hotel, the Moana.
I know that one. Right on the beach.
Yeah, that one. She said it was built right where her family's summer home used to be.
Wow, that's a pretty pointed reminder.
It was. She wasn't going to let them just erase Hawaiian history.
It's like beneath all the glitz and glamour of the new hotel, there's this underlying tension.
Yeah, for sure. For some, the hotel was progress and luxury, but for Native Hawaiians, it represented displacement.
And this wasn't just in Waikiki, right?
No, all over Oahu, they were draining wetlands, filling in fish ponds.
To make way for more development.
Exactly. Hotels, businesses, military bases, all expanding rapidly.
So on top of all this, you've got tourists coming in, the military presence growing, A&D.
And then you add the population boom.
Right. Workers coming in from Japan, China, the Philippines, Portugal.
All looking for work and a new life.
Hawaii must have been like this incredible mix of cultures.
It was this huge melting pot. And that's when we start to see a multiracial middle class emerge.
In a new kind of Hawaiian culture, right?
Exactly. Blending all these different traditions and influences.
It's like the birth of modern Hawaii almost.
It is. And speaking of cultural fusion, we can't forget about the Aloha shirt.
Oh, I love a good Aloha shirt. Never really thought about their history, though.
They have a super interesting backstory.
Okay, tell me.
So it actually comes from those simple Japanese work shirts.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed that.
And Filipino men wore shirts made from pineapple fiber.
Interesting. So those were like the early prototypes.
Yeah, kind of. And then you have tailors like Kichiro Miyamoto experimenting with fabrics.
He used kimono fabric, didn't he?
He did. And he starts making these colorful, eye-catching designs.
Which tourists probably love.
They did. Miyamoto's shop, Musashiya, was one of the first to actually use the term Aloha shirt.
Oh, wow. So it all started there.
Pretty much. And then Ellery Chun, who had a clothing store, he trademarked the name.
Smart move.
Right.
Yeah.
So from those humble beginnings, the Aloha shirt just takes off.
Surfers, sailors, tourists, everyone wanted one.
And even Hollywood stars. It was a piece of this new multicultural Hawaii.
So the Aloha shirt becomes this symbol of paradise.
Exactly. And it's kind of ironic.
What's that?
The Great Depression actually helped the Aloha shirt become even more popular.
Really? Why is that?
Well, tourism obviously took a hit during the Depression.
Makes sense.
But people who had been to Hawaii...
They brought those shirts back home with them.
Yeah, especially servicemen. They became this symbol of hope, of better times.
Like a little piece of sunshine in paradise.
Exactly. But of course, the Depression had its downsides in Hawaii, too.
I was just thinking that. It wasn't all sunshine and Aloha shirts.
Right. Plantations started deporting workers to cut costs.
Oh, wow. That's harsh.
It was. And all this economic anxiety, it just fueled existing racial tensions.
Which leads us to the Massie case.
One of the darkest chapters in Hawaiian history.
It really brought those racial prejudices to light, didn't it?
It did. Shattered that idyllic image of Hawaii.
So, remind me, how did it all start?
Well, it was September 1931. Thalia Massie, a young white woman, claimed she was raped.
A group of Hawaiian men.
Yeah, 5 of them. And the media just went crazy.
Using all those inflammatory terms like savages.
Exactly, playing into all those existing fears and stereotypes.
So there was this huge pressure to get a conviction.
Absolutely. And the 5 men, they all said they were innocent.
But public opinion was against them.
Totally. There were even calls for lynching.
Wow, that's scary. So did they ever go to trial?
They did, in November of 1931.
Okay.
And even though the evidence was weak and Massie's story had holes...
They still went to trial.
Yeah, and it ended in a mistrial.
It was probably just made people even angrier.
It did, and then things took an even darker turn.
Oh no, what happened?
In January of 1932, Thalia's husband, Thomas Massie...
The Marine.
Yeah. He and 2 other Navy guys, they kidnapped Joseph Kahawai.
They kidnapped one of the suspects.
They did. They took him to Thalia's mother's house and interrogated him.
Oh my.
And during that interrogation, Kahawai was shot and killed.
That's horrifying.
It was a truly shocking turn of events.
So what happened to Massie and the others?
They were charged with murder, of course.
I mean, it's pretty open and shut, right?
You'd think so, but this is where it gets even crazier. Clarence Darrow.
The Clarence Darrow. The famous lawyer.
Yes. He agrees to represent them.
Wow, why would he take a case like that?
It was a super controversial decision. He argued temporary insanity.
Even though the evidence was against them.
Right. The jury found them guilty, but only of manslaughter.
So they were convicted, but not of murder.
Yeah, and the governor even reduced their sentence to just 1 hour.
Seriously.
Yeah. And then Massie, his wife, and her mother, they all left Hawaii right away.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
It really felt like a miscarriage of justice, especially to a lot of Hawaiians.
I can only imagine.
It became a symbol of that two-tiered justice system.
Where white privilege shielded people from real consequences.
Exactly. And it really hurt Hawaii's image, especially in the push for statehood.
So this is all happening at the same time as those efforts to make Hawaii a state.
Yeah. Delegate Samuel Wilder King was leading the charge in 1935.
But the Massie case made things harder, I bet.
Definitely. It gave more fuel to those who opposed statehood.
Painting Hawaii as this dangerous, lawless place.
Right, with all those native savages and Japanese spies, like you said before.
It's like they used the case to justify their prejudice.
Yeah, unfortunately. But there was another factor at play, too.
What's that?
Japan's growing military power in Asia.
So on top of everything else, you've got this global situation unfolding.
Exactly. And the U.S., they were really interested in Hawaii's strategic location.
Because of Pearl Harbor.
Right. Yeah. They'd already secured access to Pearl Harbor back in 1887.
And by the 1930s, there were already tons of servicemen stationed there.
Tens of thousands. And that number just kept growing after Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931.
So Hawaii was becoming even more crucial to U.S. military strategy.
Absolutely. And that's where Delegate King saw an opportunity.
He thought the military importance of Hawaii could help the case for statehood.
Exactly. In 1937, he invited a group of U.S. senators and representatives to visit.
To show them what Hawaii had to offer.
Yeah, he gave them the full VIP treatment.
Staying at the fancy Royal Hawaiian, touring the islands.
Yep. It was a full-blown PR campaign.
To show them Hawaii's value and its readiness for statehood.
Exactly. He wanted to counter those negative stereotypes and show them a modern, valuable Hawaii.
That wasn't full of savages and spies.
Right. Perception was everything. But even with all that, there were still roadblocks to statehood.
I guess old prejudices die hard.
They do. And fears about Hawaii being too different.
Culturally, politically.
Yeah, it's a reminder that prejudice can really hinder progress.
And then, of course, history takes that dramatic turn.
The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941.
Which changed everything.
It did. A tragic event, but also a turning point for both Hawaii and the U.S.
And ultimately, it led to statehood, right?
It did in 1959, a long and complicated journey.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that image of Hawaii being this peaceful paradise.
Right. And then, bam, suddenly it's a key player in a global conflict.
And it all comes down to geography, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Location, 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 as they say.
Like you were saying, an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the middle of the Pacific.
Exactly. And as Japan got more ambitious, the U.S. military presence in Hawaii just exploded.
Must have been a weird time for the people living there knowing war could be on the horizon.
There was definitely this undercurrent of anxiety, especially after Pearl Harbor.
December 1941, a date that lives in infamy.
It really changed everything. Suddenly, Hawaii wasn't just some far-off vacation spot.
It was part of the homeland, under attack.
And for a lot of mainland Americans, that was the moment they realized Hawaii's importance.
So, in a way, as terrible as it was, the attack on Pearl Harbor actually helped the statehood cause.
In a roundabout way, yes. The war effort brought everyone together.
And Hawaii played a big part in that, right?
Huge. Thousands of Hawaiians served in the military.
And the islands became a major hub for the Pacific Campaign.
It was a real turning point. Even in the face of tragedy, you saw this amazing resilience.
Speaking of resilience, there's that incredible story of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team.
Oh, yeah. The Japanese-American soldiers.
Fighting with incredible bravery in Europe.
And facing so much discrimination back home.
It's like even while they were risking their lives for their country, they weren't fully accepted.
It's a really powerful story about patriotism and overcoming adversity.
And they became one of the most decorated units in U.S. military history.
A testament to their courage and dedication.
Absolutely. So after the war, the push for statehood really picked up steam.
Yeah, there was this new momentum, this feeling that Hawaii had proven itself.
But there were still people who opposed it, weren't there?
Oh, yeah, there was still resistance. Some said Hawaii was too different from the mainland.
Culturally, they meant.
Yeah, and some even worried about the political impact.
Of a state with a large Asian population.
Exactly. Those same old prejudices were still lurking beneath the surface.
It's like no matter how much progress was made, those biases were hard to shake.
Unfortunately, that's often how it goes. But the people of Hawaii, they didn't give up.
They kept fighting for their right to self-determination.
And finally, in 1959, after decades of effort, Hawaii became the 50th state.
It's like the culmination of everything we've talked about.
Yeah, all the struggles, the triumphs, the cultural shifts.
And the global forces that shaped Hawaii's destiny.
It really shows how history is never just one thing.
It's this messy, complicated tapestry of events and ideas.
And sometimes even tragic events can lead to positive change.
It's kind of inspiring when you think about it.
It is. It shows the power of perseverance and hope, even in the face of huge challenges.
Well, this has been an amazing journey through Hawaiian history.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
From those early surfers riding the waves to the birth of the Aloha shirt.
And from the sugar plantations to the fight for statehood.
It's incredible how connected it all is.
It really highlights the complexity of history.
And the importance of understanding how seemingly separate events can actually be intertwined.
Yeah, it's all part of a bigger picture.
I'm left thinking about Duke Kahanamoku and that spirit of aloha.
Yeah, he really embodied the heart of Hawaii, didn't he?
That warmth, that welcoming feeling.
Even through all the challenges, that spirit endured.
It's a reminder that there's always hope, always duty to be found, even in tough times.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's been great exploring this with you.
It really has. And thanks to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into Hawaiian history. We hope you learned something new and maybe even got inspired to explore this fascinating topic further.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.